I've got a chart here. The source is Al Jazeera. It goes through the military capabilities of Israel and Iran, Scott. So active personnel, Israel's at 170,000, Iran's at 610,000. So that's between the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Air Defense, and the IRGC. Now, let's go through one by one. So let's go through the personnel. Active personnel, 170,000 to 610,000, Israel to Iran. Reserve, Israel has 465,000, Iran has 350,000. How important is this number, this metric, when looking at the military capabilities of both sides? And then we'll go to the defense budget and the rest of the artillery, the air defense system, the combat aircrafts, etc.
Well, Israel and Iran share no common border. So the likelihood of Israeli divisions squaring off against Iranian divisions are very slim. I mean, Iran would have to physically occupy Iraq and physically drive through Syria to get there. And, that's logistically very difficult to do and operationally tough. Long lines of communication, susceptible to interdiction. So these numbers are meaningless, to be honest. What you need to focus on is strike aircraft, missiles, air defense, and with
I'll give you
Iran,
those numbers, Scott, which you probably know. So combat capable aircrafts, 345 for Israel, 312 plus an extra 23 for the IRGC for Iran. And obviously, those are older jets. I think most are older Russian MiG fighter jets and Sukhoi fighter jets. Israel has F-35s, US-made F-35s. That seems, especially based on what we've seen over the last 24 hours, just a big discrepancy there in the capabilities of both sides.
Right, but Iran's not striking Israel with Iranian Air Force aircraft. So take those out of the picture.
Why? Is that because of Israel's air defense system? And the U.S.
Yes, and also the aircraft that Iran have aren't conducive to long-range strike. These are tactical aircraft, to be used to defend Iranian airspace, as opposed to projecting power into Israel.
But
so
another question. Sorry for my lack of expertise, but couldn't they intercept the F-35s? So they don't have those capabilities whatsoever.
Anything can be intercepted. I mean, the Serbians shot down an F-117 stealth fighter during the Kosovo conflict. The F-35 is always at risk. We've heard stories about how the Houthi in less sophisticated air defense were able to lock on to F-35s and cause American F-35s to break off attack runs. I would think that the Iranians or the Israelis would limit their exposure, meaning that most of the attacks seem to be from standoff weapons that could be delivered by Israeli aircraft from within Iraqi airspace, and that it would be a very limited thing to have aircraft in it. They were talking about Israel losing F-16s, maybe up to 2 F-16s in this strike. Why would they be losing F-16s? Well, if the F-16s were providing combat cover for instance, the extraction of special operations forces, then you would need an F-16 to be physically over the airspace. But it's a very dangerous thing to put your aircraft into Iranian airspace when you don't need to. This is why Israel has the standoff weapons. But Iran doesn't need them. Iran has its ballistic missile strike force, which tonight has demonstrated through at least 3 waves of being able to penetrate air defense and strike targets in Israel. So those are the for Iran, you need to focus on air defense and ballistic missile strike. Those are the 2 things that are most important right now. And for Israel, you need to focus on air defense and their air force's ability to strike. These are the 2 factors that go in. How many armored divisions you have is irrelevant in this regard, because those forces.
What about the submarines, Scott? So we've got 5 for Israel, obviously more advanced, and 17 for Iran. Do these make a difference whatsoever?
Not in this fight. The submarines for Iran are used to defend coastal waters, maybe some power projection into the Red Sea, etc. For Israel, they have some cruise missile launch capabilities, but strictly speaking, you're going to get far more devastating results with the weapons that Israel has already used than you are adding a handful of cruise missiles and putting a submarine at risk.
And I want to, the last topic I want to close out on is the point you made earlier, the possibility of a regime change in Iran. I want to dig into this further. We know that Prince Reza Pahlavi, which the panel was debating how much influence he has in Israel. He said, I can't read out, I don't want to read out the whole tweet, but he says, my message to the military, law enforcement, and security forces is clear. This regime and its corrupt and incompetent leaders do not value your lives or of Iran or our Iran. Separate yourself from them and join the people. And we then saw, I think, a photo of an Israeli official that he took with Prince Reza Pahlavi just a few hours ago. It says coming soon or something along those lines. Not sure if you saw that photo. Two questions there. First, what is the likelihood of a regime change with Iran? 3. Number 2 is that Israel's goal or long-term goal with these attacks? And number 3, how big of a role will the prince play in this?
Well, let's go back to 2023, the summer of 2023. If you remember, there was that tragic incident of the Kurdish girl who was arrested because of a hijab violation, and she went to an Iranian police center where she died under circumstances that are under dispute. But the bottom line is it triggered massive social unrest in Iran that led to confrontation between a population that was losing faith in the government. This was then exploited by every intelligence service who had a proxy force available. You saw massive uprisings. It became a virtual civil war. I had the opportunity to speak to President Raisi in September about this. And what he said was that this was the greatest threat to Iran that it had ever experienced since the Iran-Iraq war, that the public uprising supported by foreign intelligence service was a very big stress on the Iranian government, the regime, etc. But they were able to overcome it, and that they actually emerged from this stronger because it proved that the Iranian people, when put under pressure, wouldn't flake off and go join the opposition, but would rather rally around the government. And what the government's done since then, I don't know if you've seen photographs coming out of Tehran, women aren't wearing the hijab. They aren't wearing the head covering. There's women out there who are walking with their hair exposed. So Iran has made the social changes necessary to win the support of the population. I don't believe that Iran is susceptible to the kind of outside regime change forces that it was vulnerable to in 2023. I think that the Israeli attack is guaranteed that will never happen. I think, if anything, the people of Iran are going to rally even closer around. The assassination of Qasem Soleimani rallied closely around. So I don't think that the Iranian regime is vulnerable. I think that there's a gross miscalculation by both Israel and the United States and Europe, who are heavily involved in these regime change activities, about the vulnerability of the Iranian government, the supreme leader. As for the prince, look, he's a paid puppet of Israel. He has support from MI6 and the CIA. But if he stepped foot on the ground in Iran, he would be ripped apart from head to toe. He has no support whatsoever amongst the mainstream. He is a descendant of Reza Shah Pahlavi, a man who ran Savak, a man who tortured Iranians, who suppressed freedom. There is no love in Iran for Reza Shah Pahlavi.
Okay. And then the last question for you, Scott, is what do we expect to see over the next 5 and 10 days? Number 1, and number 2, how long do you think this war will continue?
Well, I mean, again, it's now a question of sustainment versus escalation. Israel launched some attacks today that in Iran appeared to be able to deflect, meaning that there wasn't a decisive second strike against especially Tehran, etc. Iran's retaliation tonight at least looked impressive visually, as if Israel is defenseless, that Israel has lost the capacity to defend itself. Tomorrow, is Israel going to try and continue to be deflected, and Iran then comes and strikes Israel and leaves it defenseless? Or is Israel going to have to escalate, hit a different target deck, try to expand this conflict? Israel's goal at this point in time, if having failed to achieve the collapse of the regime and the weakening of the regime, is to draw the United States.
Before you finish, just came in now. I think you'd want to hear this. Channel 13 just put out unprecedented destruction in the greater Tel Aviv area, the likes which we have never seen before. And then Israel's Katz, the Minister of Defense of Israel, just said Iran has crossed every red line. So this seems like a successful attack by Iran.
It's a tremendously successful attack. So now the question is, what does Israel do? Do they escalate? Now, do they seek to escalate? Israel has to ask its question, how long can Iran sustain these attacks? because Israel cannot defend itself. That's it. It was proven tonight that Israel's defense shield does not work. Israel cannot defend itself. So if Iran is capable of sustaining these attacks, then that's a problem for Israel, which now means they either have to do a negotiated settlement, which they're not going to do at this juncture because they're not defeated yet. They're growing to the realization they can't win, or escalate to try and draw the United States in. And I think that's probably going to be Israel's next step, is to do some sort of escalation that will draw the United States in.
So I'm going to keep you a bit longer if you don't mind, Scott. So we're going to just share footage now of the moment the defense ministry got hit. The team's going to share it now. And while they're sharing it, are they about to share it now? So that's an air defense missile being launched. So while this is playing, I'm not sure if this footage will show it being hit. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the defense ministry.
Yeah, the Kyria. Yeah.
Would you have expected that to get hit?
I expect to be the first target hit. Symbolically, it has to be the first target because the Israelis assassinated several senior Iranian defense officials. So the first target that must be struck in Israel has to be the Kyria. I would also believe that Iran would have targeted Dimona, although I don't know, because the Iranians right now have sort of a high card. I mean, they have the high ground, because if there is radiation detected out of Natanz, which some people have suggested, that means that Israel has violated every red line when it comes to striking nuclear facilities. And the IAEA has already called Israel out for this. Israel may be losing the world on this one. I mean, you get that first night of ooh, ah, oh, drones, oh, special forces. But then the reality of what Israel has done starts to sink home. It's a violation of international law, a violation of every norm and standard that exists in the world. And they attacked a nuclear facility, causing the leakage of radiation.
More than,
that's bad news.
Exactly. They attacked at least 3 nuclear facilities. I know, because initially they only attacked one, the main one, the Natanz nuclear facility.
Right.
Then now we have reports that they've attacked 2 others, Fordo and Isfahan, and I'm not sure if they attacked Bushehr or not. I've got conflicting reports.
No, they haven't attacked the reactor at Bushehr. Firdos is underground, so they're just not going to do any penetration there. They would be attacking external structures.
They don't think they can,
Isfahan,
but they can't penetrate it underground?
No, not even close. The only thing that gives Firdos is a nuclear bomb. That's it. And so the other one, Isfahan, is the yellow cake production, where they make uranium hexafluoride and things of that nature. That's above the ground. That's a chemical process. You destroy you destroy production capacity, but that's easily replicated. So striking Isfahan, it's a shame though. Isfahan's a beautiful city, so I hope they didn't destroy any of the cultural aspects of it. But look, Israel crossed red lines. I mean, they can't talk about Iran crossing red lines. Israel has crossed red lines. And if this thing continues to escalate, who knows where it's going to go? This is a very dangerous situation. Very dangerous situation.
One more question, and I'll ask you the wrap-up question, Scott. The other question I had was a bit surprising. So first, Iran seems to have been caught off guard. How could they be caught this off guard? Is it Trump tricking them by saying, hey, they had the leaks of him telling Israel not to attack, if you remember these leaks, that seemed to be intended to mislead Iran, allegedly, or either Trump was not informed. So there's like two points to be made there, 2 perspectives. And then the other one is, I think there was a meeting that was mentioned between Netanyahu and the Trump administration, or some Israeli officials and the Trump administration. Again, these seem to have been intentionally to mislead Iran. So Iran was caught off guard. Would you agree with that? Is that why the attack was so successful? And the second question is, like, why initially the Iran, as it was attacked, only had 100 drones that were all intercepted? That was their initial attack. Is that normal for them to be that limited in their initial response?
Well, I believe Iran was totally caught off guard, and I believe that a big part of it played into trusting the United States to be serious about negotiations. What we didn't see behind the scenes were the the various proposals that were being exchanged. They were talking about some amazing things about letting U.S. inspectors on the ground in Iran to be part of this, talking about a multinational fuel bank that would absorb excess production capacity. These are unprecedented concessions made by Iran, and Iran, of course, has to consider. So it's a deflection when you say, okay, we're going to consider this, consider that. That means that the Iranian government, preparing for Sunday, is bringing its people in to talk about how do we further this inclusion of American inspectors? How do we talk about this fuel bank? What are the technical aspects involved? That's their priority of thought. And as a result, the military, which was probably on a heightened state of alert, calmed down and said, okay, we'll go back to heightened alert on Sunday. So they went into a pause cycle. And that's when the Israelis struck, when Iran was at its weakest. About the drones, look, Israel, I believe, hit Iran very hard. I think they took out, Iran had a standby retaliation capability of a certain number of their ballistic missiles were deployed in the field. I believe Israel took those all out.
Wow.
And the only thing left for Iran in terms of an immediate response was to fire off drones. Iran had to do something, had to send a signal that we aren't surrendering. They had to show the people we are responding, because it's psychologically, to receive that kind of Pearl Harbor attack is psychologically devastating. So the regime had to demonstrate we are doing something. They fired 100 drones. They got shot down. Drones are a dime a dozen. It's not the end of the world. But Iran had to, they needed time to recoup, to figure out what assets we have to establish communications with their different missile bases, get an inventory of status, what they're able to do. And then they have to think in terms of a campaign. Okay, how many missiles are we going to launch the first night? How are we going to launch the second night? And so on and so forth. So I think that's why they launched the 100 drones, just as a symbolic act of resistance, until which time they could reconstitute a strike, a retaliation capability.
So just a correction to be made. The Israeli Defense Ministry did not suffer a direct hit from Iranian missiles. 2 Iranian missiles struck within 150 to 300 meters of the compound. So it seems they have missed the compound. But there is a comment here from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. Quote, "We reject any calls for restraint at this time." And that's from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. Is that expected for them to say that, or does that mean anything to you?
I think right now we're in the standard conflict rhetoric that's coming from both sides. But again, to have the foreign ministry say that's okay, because at some point in time, the foreign ministry could be overridden by higher authorities. The lower down this extreme rhetoric is, the better off you are, because that leaves room for somebody up above to go, all right, we've reconsidered. You get worried when that rhetoric comes from the supreme leader, because there's only one person above the supreme leader, and that's God. And if God is speaking on the side of Iran, we're all in a lot of trouble.
So to let you finish with the comment you were making earlier as we were wrapping, is what do you expect to see over the next 5-10 days? You were answering the question before we got interrupted by breaking news.
I feel that Israel, at this juncture, in doing their calculations, either has withheld an additional Sunday punch to take Iran by surprise, meaning that they're going to come in with some other surprises in terms of capabilities. If they can't do that, then you're looking at escalation in terms of striking Iranian oil infrastructure, et cetera. But if Israel doesn't have any more solutions to this, operational solutions, then the only thing they have to do is bring in the United States. And so they will be seeking to bring in the United States. Iran's job right now is to keep the United States out of this conflict. If Iran right now has demonstrated the upper hand, that they have the ability to strike Israel at will, it's in Iran's best interest simply to repeat this every night. And if Israel is indeed losing aircraft and pilots, that's also unsustainable. And who knows what the future holds? Maybe the Iranians will be able to, snatch up a couple special forces teams on the ground. We'll see. This war isn't over. Both sides now are talking about no red lines going forward. So tomorrow will be a very interesting day.
And it's just crazy, the world that we're living in right now. And a few years ago, a war in Ukraine was unthinkable. A war between Israel and Iran was almost unthinkable. And obviously now we're talking about potential conflict between China and the US when it comes to Taiwan.
It's no longer unthinkable.
It's a pretty scary world. Does this war change anything when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, moving attention away? Does that give Russia the ability to continue the war? And does Russia losing a key ally Obviously Iran's not going to be able to continue sending drones to Russia with the war it's facing. Could that impact Russia's position in the Ukraine war?
Well, Iran's not sending drones to Russia anymore. Iran sent an initial tranche, but Russian defense industry has absorbed these. In fact, the drones that are being launched against Ukraine today, the only thing they have in common with the Shahed 136s that were sent in is their shape. Totally different propulsion, different warheads, different electronic warfare capabilities. Russia has taken those drone designs and made them their own. But that doesn't obviate the fact that Russia owes Iran a huge debt. Iran stepped in at a very critical time when Russia was losing the drone conflict. Russia needed a weapon system to help break Ukraine's air defense systems, and this was the drone. And Iran took a big risk, took great exposure politically and geopolitically to assist Russia. Russia signed a strategic framework agreement with Iran on January 17th of this year. Iran is a BRICS nation. Russia has strategic objectives with Iran, the North-South Economic Corridor seeking to link Russia with Iran through Azerbaijan and others. China just opened up the new Silk Road. These are two nations seeking to position Iran, a BRICS member, to be a critical part of a trans-Eurasian economic union. What does it say if Russia stands by and allows Iran to be picked off by Israel and the United States? This regime change operation fundamentally changes the whole calculation with BRICS and the concept of a multipolar world. So I think we're going to see Russia becoming very heavily engaged diplomatically. I think it's important for Iran to establish its own the ability to stand up on its own 2 feet and punch back, which they did tonight, and maybe they can do that over the next next couple of days. But Russia can't afford to allow Israel and the United States to pluck Iran out of the BRICS membership. That would be devastating to BRICS. It would be a huge blow to Russia's credibility and China's credibility. So I think you're going to see.
Could we see any military support of Iran by China or Russia?
I don't believe so.
Again,
China
nothing is unthinkable anymore. I'm asking the questions I would have never asked.
Yeah, no, I mean China doesn't have force projection capacity, but what you would see from China, in my opinion, is a statement being sent to the United States to the effect of karma is a bitch. Excuse my language. What goes around comes around. You pluck off Iran, Taiwan's history, pal. You think you can go around and pluck Iran off? We're telling you right now, Taiwan's history. If you want to save Taiwan, knock this nonsense off. I do think you can see hints of that nature. And for Russia, I think they need to send a signal to the United States, too, that while Russia is willing to absorb American stupidity in Ukraine because it's, simply momentum derived from previous failed mistakes, Russia cannot tolerate America behaving irresponsibly on the Russian periphery, and Iran is a strategic part of Russia's future going forward. I don't see Russian missiles flying, but I do see Russia making it clear to the United States that if you want to have Russian cooperation in other projects, this thing has to come to an end. Israel overstepped its bounds, and frankly, Donald Trump, you overstepped your bounds. Iran could be, everybody looking at saying it's the United States reasserting its role, but I actually see it sort of the high watermark of American hegemony, meaning this is Pickett's charge. That's it. That they're not getting any further because China is going to draw a line on Taiwan, and that's the end of Taiwan. And Russia will draw a line saying, not only will we no longer cooperate on Ukraine, but we're not going to cooperate on anything because you are the threat. You are the existential.
Do you think Russia could leverage the Ukraine war and the peace negotiations, and China leverage the tariff negotiations?
China can do the tariff. Russia can't. Russia has no flexibility on Ukraine. This is an existential struggle for Russia. That's why they've poured all the resources into it. And the Ukraine conflict only ends with the strategic defeat of Ukraine. Russia's not going to give that up for anybody because now we're talking about Mother Russia. But Russia would show flexibility on other issues that it's engaging with the United States, that the United States is deemed to be critical for its national security going forward. But if the United States wants to try and pick Iran off in this way, Russia can't sit back and let it happen. So I do think that there would be consequences for America's actions. And if you get Russia and China stepping in diplomatically to warn America of the dire consequences, and Iran is able to stand up on its own 2 feet and continue to deliver punches to Israel, you could see a negotiated to the settlement that is the detriment of Israel and to the benefit of Iran.
Last piece of news, Scott, as we wrap up. IDF did tell civilians you can exit the shelters, but don't go too far. Civilians told to leave shelters, but stay near them in case Iran attacks again. So it seems the waves are over, but as you said, waves could continue throughout the night, depending on Iran's capacity, what's left over after Israel's attack. Scott, pleasure to have you. Really appreciate it under these circumstances. We essentially had, as we were doing our interview that was pre-scheduled, the attack by Iran against Israel was happening live, so it's a pretty surreal moment. Reminds me of the day that October 7th was happening. We started the space as the attacks continued throughout the next couple of days, and then Israel launched the war there. So it's pretty crazy times ahead, but I appreciate your time.